Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. I hope you know what time it is. Woo-hoo-hoo. It's time for Life of a Ciso with yours truly, Dr. Eric Cole is in the house. I think you can normally tell, right? If I got the curtain, I'm in a hotel room. So I'm back in beautiful Los Angeles. Had some great dinner meetings last night with some good colleagues and friends. Have some meetings today, and we are ready to rock and roll. So I see my man Vic. Buenos dias, right? This morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. See where everyone's coming from around the world. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening. Thank you for joining me. So, all right, our first question, Justin gets the prize today, right? He gets the prize for the first question of the day. Is teaching for an organization like SANS a smart move if you want to become a world class security engineer? Yes. Boom. Done. Next question. No, I'll give you a yes. Anything in which you can show expertise and thought leadership is awesome if you want to be world class. So it's great to be able, if you're technical, right? SANS is an amazing organization. They have great courses, very prestigious to be an instructor for SANS. So definitely a good, positive thing to do. It takes work, right? There's a process to do that, but yeah, definitely a good thing, Justin. But just so I'm clear, I also want to emphasize you need to enjoy it, right? You do need to enjoy teaching, right? Teaching is fun, but especially with conferences and that, it's a lot of work. You're 5 or 6 days in a row. You're starting at 8 or 9 in the morning, going till 5 or even 7 p.m. at night, depending on the course. So it has to be something that you really love and enjoy. It's not the only way to be world class, but it definitely is one of them. So just quick review. Any area, any field you want to be world class, you have to be thought leader. To be a thought leader, you have to be visible. So you have to be active at some level on social media, whether it's videos, whether it's writing articles, writing short blog posts. I don't know if they even call them blogs anymore. All right. I remember when we used to have wikis. I don't think those exist, but you need to be putting content out there. And I want to be clear, putting content out there. In the beginning, don't worry whether you're getting a lot of responses or not. Right? If people go, oh, I'm putting content out there, but not a lot of people are reading it or not a lot of followers, that will come. Right? That will come with time, but it's you putting the energy out there to do something. So that's one. Another is world-class people have podcasts. World-class people put out regular content. They schedule it. World-class people write books. World-class people do keynotes. World-class people present at conferences. World-class people teach for top-notch, world-class organizations. So it's all those things out there. What you want to do, Justin, is figure out the plan. The reason why many people don't get to world-class status as quick as they possibly can is because they don't have a plan that's scheduled. So it's what I call next day, next week, next month syndrome. Oh, I'll do it next week. I'll do it next week. I'll do it next week. Now, let me ask you a question. And I know it's none of you because you're all world class because you're here, but it's November 10th. Are there things that you wanted to, like in January, I'm going to go to the gym every day and you still have it? Or I still, and I'll tell you the number one reason why people don't accomplish what they want is it's not scheduled and it's not planned. If it's on your calendar and it's scheduled, it gets done. So I urge all of you, and this is a great time of year as we're finishing up 2022, right? I'm one where you can start goals, you can start dreams, you can start aspirations, you can start being world class any time of the year. You don't need a kickoff, but January is as good as any, right? So spend the next 4 to 6 weeks planning out 2023. Let's say it's November 10th, 2023, a year from today. You can close your eyes if you like doing this exercise. I like going for a walk. I'm on the beach here in Dana Point, California. I'll go for a walk and do this. And just imagine if it was an amazing year. it was just a year in which you totally crushed it, what would it look like? What would you have accomplished? What would you have done? Where would you be? And then start backtracking. So if I want to have a book written, then when do I have to have all the work done? Now, depending on who's publishing it, I will tell you things like books could take a year and a half. So that might be a longer plan, but the point is plan it out. I'll tell you, writing a book is the easiest thing on the planet. Look at your calendar right now and starting in mid January for 3 weeks, block out a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Block out a Monday, Wednesday, Friday for 3 weeks. So you're working Tuesday and Thursday. Write a chapter a day. That's 9 chapters. Your book is done. You've just wrote a book in a month. Writing a book is not hard. What makes it hard is people procrastinate. People don't schedule, people don't put in the time. So figure out what are the things next year you want to do on your path to being world class and then schedule it. Just make it happen. So another question, I still see a lot of job posts asking for CISOs to have 10 to 15 years of security business than just business. If the board mindset doesn't change with such companies, how can we work around this? Have you applied for those jobs? I do not believe that is correct. What happens here is companies don't know what a CISO is. They really don't. Well, we're in this weird state of confusion where you have people that have never been a CISO, they've never had a CISO, and they don't really know what a CISO is putting together job descriptions, right, for this position. So it's just bizarre off the plate. I do not know many companies that the CISOs they hired have 10 to 15 years security experience. And I'll tell you this, and if you've been listening to me to a while for my podcast, you probably know where I'm going here. Every company that I do know that has hired a CISO that has 10 to 15 years of security experience, disaster. Woo! Right? It never ever works. Why? Because if you've done something for 10 or 15 years, you like it, you're good at it, and it's your default mode of operation. It is not impossible that there's a few amazing people out there that have done it, but it's few and far between. If you have done something for 10 or 15 years, you love it, you're great at it, it's what you want to do, and they give you a new title, but what do you think happens when you show up at the company? You drop in the security engineer mode and you're not successful as a real CISO. The only place where 10 to 15 years of experience is successful is with a small or medium company where they didn't want a CISO, they wanted a security engineer, but they needed a CISO to check a box for compliance, right? So I would not, Vikas, I would not let that discourage you. Apply. Show them why you're kick butt. Show them why you're awesome. Show you why you're amazing in that field. And I wouldn't let that bother you because trust me, that's not what's going to ultimately get the job done. CIO always has way bigger budget than CISO. How come CISO will report to CISO will report to the CIO anytime in the future? Yeah, unfortunately, not a lot. It's changing rapidly, by the way. But many companies still have cybersecurity reporting to the CIO. And therefore, because the CIO's budget has both security and IT in it, it tends to be bigger. However, I am seeing more and more organizations split it where the security and the CIO are different positions. And in many cases, security gets equal or bigger budget. Now, one thing to be careful of, who is responsible for the tangible assets? In many companies, even where security doesn't report to IT, IT is responsible for purchasing and maintaining the firewalls, the SIM, the IPS, all because it's on the network and anything on the network is IT. Now, security is responsible for managing, tracking, correlating, responding to the incidents, but the actual purchasing of the actual physical assets goes under IT. So that's one reason why you might see CIO's budget bigger and higher than security is because they have to buy the stuff, right? You determine what you want to buy, and then they have to ultimately buy it. Here's the other thing: budget doesn't matter, right? What? Sorry, I was gonna. I knew a sneeze was coming. I opened the door to get some fresh air this morning, so I'm getting a little the ocean breeze coming in, which is great. So the other question though is why? Who cares? Right? So you have a 500K budget or $1 million or $2 million budget. If the team is aware of what can you do for that job, what can't you do for that job, and they accept the risk, then who cares? So I always go in when I present to a board, I'm like, okay, you want to give me a budget of $1 million? Here's what I can do for it. If you want to give me $2 million, here's what I can do for that. Completely different risks associated with each one, right? The more money you spend, the less risk you're accepting, and the more risk you're reducing, right? Pretty straightforward stuff. Most people don't want to have those conversations with the board. What I see ends up happening is the board wants Bugatti level security. They'll give you a budget for a Honda, and security people say, okay, what are we, right? Yeah, then we're creating a problem for ourselves. But it doesn't matter who has a bigger budget. All you want to worry about and focus is on what you're given and what you can do with the budget you have. What are you fixing? What are you not fixing? And what are the risks that the board or the company has to accept by you not be willing to accept those risks? How do you deal with difficult CEO, CIO, et cetera, once you become a CISO? Defined difficult. I mean, it really is how difficult are they? Now, if it comes down to where you're saying difficult, where they don't care about security, they don't want security, they don't want to listen to you, they're not going to include you, they're not going to invite you in meetings, and they're merely giving you the minimal budget possible, and really they just want you there because it's required by regulation, and when a breach happens, they're just going to fire you anyway, then unfortunately, one answer is find a new job. I mean, there is one answer there. The other question, though, and the reason why I said, how do you define difficult? Are they really being difficult? Is there a way that you can reframe the situation so that they're not being difficult, they're just being inquisitive? And I know I'm getting a little into some of the mindset and Jedi mind tricks with you here, but just think about the different reaction. If you say somebody is difficult, right? You sort of get a negative view. Somebody hates me, right? You sort of get a little more tensed. But if you step back and say somebody doesn't understand, or somebody has a different point of view, do you see how it comes across? Your body doesn't react the same way. It's more of a neutral or positive word than a negative. So I would argue, are they really being difficult? What exactly are they doing that you use the word difficult? And what is the role that you're playing? And what can you do in order to change it? What are the different options that might or might not be available to you? When you say difficult, well, they don't invite you to meetings. Well, why? Have you ever been invited to a meeting? Maybe they don't understand the value you can provide. Have you given them value? Have you sent them emails? Have you tried to communicate? Have you tried to set up meetings? Have you tried to ask them, what can I do to help you? Or what can I do to assist you? Or what would you consider if I accomplish to be a success in cybersecurity? Ask more questions, probe a little more, and really pull on that string of what is you're saying that's causing you to say they're difficult? And is there a way to reframe or look at it differently and make it work? Like I said, there might be some point where you decide you have to leave and find a new job. But I find a lot of cases where I hear that they're difficult, they don't understand me, they don't cooperate, they don't help. It's a reframing issue where really you haven't provided what they wanted. You've never asked them what they wanted. You've never given them what they needed. So therefore, there's tension there, but that tension can easily be removed or resolved. So, question is a sort of what training should I take? It really depends, Mark, on what path you're on. So, if you really like cybersecurity, then you can take more of the general classes that cover the different areas, different technologies. If you want to move into incident response and you go down that route, or forensics, or SIM, or SOC analysis, or things along those lines. So, when it comes to training, a lot of it is really what path you want to take. And here's the more important one, though: what skills do you need currently to be more effective at your job? And here's one where I'm going to challenge many of you: it's often not technical. So, right now, if a magic genie appeared that looked like Eric and said, I grant you one wish, but the wish has to be a skill that I will give you that will allow you to be more effective in your job, what would that skill be? Where today, if you really look back over the next day, week, month, year, where have you been struggling the most? Is it really on knowing technology? Because most technical people can pick that up pretty quick. Is it on scheduling? Is it on time management? Is it on communication? Is it on, with one of my friends, it was on health. COVID, he got in some bad eating habits and he is not well a lot of the time. And that's impacting his ability. He said, I wish I could be healthy. Boom. That's a skill, right? Learning how to eat, learning how to exercise and do all those factors. So the question I would really ask is not just what's the next best class to take, but what is the skill that if you had would allow you to be more effective? And I'll be in many cases, it's a soft skill. You might actually want to take a communications class. You might want to take a writing class. You might want to take a mindset class. Right? If you're always negative and you're always down and you're always, things never work out and I'm frustrated that nobody ever listens to me and blah, 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 then guess what? You might want to go to a motivational seminar and learn some tips or tricks on that front. So the question is, if we're sort of on this journey, on this game of life, what is the current skill that if you had would help take you to that next level? What is your caffeine of choice? That's a good one. I have a whole array. Like some people are connoisseurs of fine wine, and I'm a connoisseur of fine caffeine choices. So it depends. Uh, and once again, I'm not endorsing any products in any way, shape, or form. A general caffeine that I like if I'm just dragging a little, having a rough day, I like Celsius. It's green tea based. It doesn't have a lot of extra sugar or a lot of extra components. The big thing with caffeine beverages is you got to remember the sugar, right? Some of these caffeinated beverages are 200 to 300 calories and are just a ton of sugar. Now, here's the problem. Yeah, the caffeine is going to give you energy, and the sugar will also give you an energy boost, but sugar causes a super crash. That's why a lot of these energy drinks, you feel good for a couple of hours, and then you crash pretty hard on that front. So that's one to be super careful with. For my workouts, I tend to switch it up. So I tend to usually do any of the workouts that are about 150. That's another thing to watch. Some of these new energy drinks on the caffeine front are like 300 calories. Like they'll jack you up pretty quick, but they have other effects on it. So I do like Bang. It's more of a soda type drink. So if you like the bubbles and stuff, Bang's good. They have some creatine and some stuff in there. Total War is another one that I like or enjoy for pre-workout. C4 is sort of you go to, right? None of these are like unbelievably the best on the planet, right? But on the other hand, the ones I mentioned are low on sugar and caffeine, and then they have some B vitamins, some arginine, some other things in there. So it really, once again, comes back to what is your goal or what are you trying to accomplish? Because if you're looking at for a pre-workout, you want to get some arginine in there, some blood flow, some creatine for building muscle, and a couple of other ingredients on that front. The big thing on caffeine that I would really, really stay away from is soda. Right? That stuff is just not good for you. Right? Even diet soda has sucralene, crucoline, mucoline, whatever that stuff is. So you want to be careful there. Once again, I am not a medical doctor. I'm not giving advice. I'm not endorsing products in any way, shape, or form. I'm just giving you some of my opinions on this front. Most people will tell you, and it's not bad recommendation, one of the best sources of caffeine is a cup of coffee. I'm not a coffee drinker. I don't like hot beverages. It's just not my mojo, right? So, and I don't really like the taste of coffee, but that's another one that if you're just looking for a basic boost of caffeine, coffee's not a bad way to go. Should the security team be the investigators for HR issues, or is it best to try to outsource that? It's a huge distraction. Yeah, so should, in my opinion, no. I agree with you. It causes a lot of problems, a lot of issues, and it uses up a lot of time. And you sort of implied it, but it's sort of a conflict of interest because if you're investigating the employees or things along those lines, it could get a little messy on that front. And yeah, unfortunately, in some cases, if you're in an organization where you're spending 30, 40, 50% of your time doing HR investigations, you got to worry about the organization. Do you really have that many bad employees? Right? It sort of makes you scratch your head a little bit on, hey, what's really going on here in terms of who's doing what and who's focused on what and what areas. Now, unfortunately, if it's a smaller company, you might not outsourcing might not be an option for privacy reasons and NDAs and things like that. They might not want to outsource it. But the thing I would do there, Joseph, is, or sorry, that was Econ. Sorry, I was reading ahead. Is I would really just present the data. Say, listen, maybe we need to do a better job on the hiring process. If 30% of our employees you are constantly investigating, and we're spending 50% of our time doing this, maybe we need to look at a better process. Maybe we're fixing the symptom here, not the root cause problem. I find in a lot of those cases, they have no idea how much time they're utilizing because they're just asking you to do things. When you come back and say to your boss or your boss's boss or even HR, do you realize we're spending 50% of our job running down and investigating internal employees, and we can't do X, Y, and Z because of that? So just so you're aware, it is impacting the business. It is impacting cybersecurity, and we are not able to accomplish what we need to accomplish. Do you want to continue down this path? Right. So it's one of those where you start putting some data and providing some details around it. And that's another way to be able to get it to shift pretty quickly. So Joseph signed up for your CISO course yesterday. Woohoo! Do a happy dance. Awesome, Joseph. Pleasure to have you join the program. I'm looking forward. I believe the next call is Monday, so hopefully that's on your calendar. And I look forward to connecting with you there and connecting you with the rest of the folks in that program. Super awesome. Super excited. Excited to complete the course and begin my journey of becoming a world-class CISO. I'm going to change that a little bit. You are a world-class CISO. The journey I'm going to take you on is going to help you remember that. Right? You have it inside you, right? So I'm not going to give you anything that you don't already have. What I like to do is, yeah, it's deep down inside you. You have that, but you have so much stuff that's built up around you that you sometimes forget or don't use that talent. So I'm just going to help you remove all that extra stuff and help you remember you are world class and you're a world class CISO. The analogy I always give is with the statue of David. I don't know if you ever heard the saying when he was sculpting out. I think it's Michelangelo. I sometimes mix them up. I think it was Michelangelo who did David. And they're like, how did you go in with this big block of marble and actually chip away to reveal David? How did you create David out of this marble? And he goes, whoa, whoa, whoa. The David was always in the marble. I just removed the excess to let him come out. Right? He was always there. There was just some extra pieces that I had to get rid of. And when I got rid of the extra pieces, the true David revealed himself in the marble. That's how I look at this process with my certifications is you're already there. We just have to remove the excess marble so you can see and be able to focus in on that area. So I discovered my goal to be a world-class cybersecurity professional, not necessarily a CISO, but I still love to learn about it. Yeah, Blazin, here's the key part. A world-class security professional still has to know how to communicate with executives. They still have to know how to present to the board. One of the things I tell folks is I think everyone, even world-class security engineers, should take my CISO cert because the reason is there's still skills you need. You're not going to use them as much as others, but you still need those skill sets. So essentially, if we broke out the skill set that was needed to be a world-class CISO and the skill set that was needed to be a world-class security engineer, it'd be very close. One could even say it might be identical. The difference is the expertise level in those given areas. So if you're looking at technical areas like prevention, detection, firewall, SIM, cloud, all those areas, if 10 means mastery and 1 means minimal to no knowledge, a world-class security engineer is going to want to be 8 to 10 in all of them and 10 in a few because you want to have a specialty. A world-class CISO is going to be 3 to 5 in each of those areas. But a world-class CISO still has to understand the basic tech. They're just not going to be masters or experts in it. If we flip it to the soft skills, presenting to a board, communicating to non-technical people, being able to define and determine risk in a given area. Your world-class CISO is going to be 8 to 10 in those areas. Your world-class security engineer is going to be 3 to 5. So the skill sets are going to be similar. It's just where is your expertise? Where do you spend most of your time, energy, and effort? But you still have to have basic understanding. If you cannot communicate to non-technical people, if you cannot hold a conversation with a non-technical person like a manager, director, a vice president, or a C-level executive, you are not going to be a world-class security engineer. You're not. You might be a world-class security technical expert, right? But an engineer implies you're doing solving problems, and to solve difficult, complex problems, you need to be able to communicate with those other people. So no, Blazin, you broke the code, and you're really smart here. Is that you still need to learn and understand some of this material. So good on you, because most security professionals are like, I'm just going to do my techie geek. All I care about is techie geek, and as long as I can be techie geek, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, yeah, you're really limiting what you can do in that area. Why has it been so difficult for companies to establish true offline backups to defend against ransomware? Real simple. They have confused and thought that backups and replication are the same thing. Almost every organization out there that has been hit with ransomware has full scale replication. So from accidental data loss, they are protected. If a server crashes or goes down, they will automatically fail over to other servers in other areas. And if there's data loss on one server, it will be rebuilt and replicated from other servers. So over the years, when we started realizing how dependent we are on our data, companies switched from doing backups like the tapes or offsite storage or things like that to, hey, let's just do full scale replication. That's even better. Now we're doing real time backups. The data is automatically in 8 locations. So as long as we never ever lose 8 locations at one time, we're good. They never thought about ransomware. They never thought about what if that data gets corrupted, it's believed to be up to date, and it replicates itself to all the other servers. That was never thought about, and that's the problem there. The people thinking that replication and backups are equivalent, and that's why they're not doing it. The data is backed up, it's replicated, right? It's just real time, which plays against them when a ransomware attack hits. So that's really the issue where companies didn't think they needed to do backups because they had replication in place. And now they're learning that that's not really true. So now they're adding backups back in and others. But once again, when you haven't done backups on 3,000 servers, and now you need to start doing that, it's not an easy task, right? It's not an easy or simple thing to do. So that's really where that struggling is taking place. A CISO is usually responsible for safeguarding what the CIO has implemented from business perspective. Then in such a scenario, how come CISO will have upper hand than CIO? So yes, typically a CIO is responsible for uptime availability. They're responsible for making sure data is accessible, data is available, packets flow, packet is there when it needs it. And then CISO lays on top of that it needs to be secure, protected, confidentiality, integrity, and other areas. So yes, in a logical sense of the world, a CIO should report to the CISO, right? A CIO is a piece of what the CISO needs to do because availability is IT, and that's one component of it. The problem is it just has to come with evolution. IT came out first, security came out second. So when security came out and it was smaller, it was viewed as a subset of CIO, and it's easy just to put them under the CIO. So that's where they did it. And now we're trying to deal with those growing pains of, hey, that was not a good decision. How do we fix, address, or change that decision moving forward? So it was how the timing occurred, how the growth happened, and now we're at a point where it was a bad decision based on the new data we have, and we have to switch it, modify it, or change it. Is the board always right? How do we socialize the board and executive who focus on qualitative audit findings? So I always have a joke. Whoever signs the check and determines whether you're employed is always right at some level. But that doesn't mean they're always right. And I know you're probably like, what did you just, that doesn't make it. And he said, let me explain. Yes, ultimately at the end of the day, when the dust settles and you've presented all the data, all the information and everything to them in an accurate, correct manner, and they have fully assessed all the information, and there is a disagreement between you and the board wins. Because guess what? The board can fire you, you can't fire them. The board can decide no longer to give you a paycheck. You can't decide to no longer give them a paycheck. So just from the fundamental way it works and the authority that is granted to them by the company, yes, at the end of the day when the dust settles. However, that doesn't mean initially, based on limited information or incorrect information, that the board is always right initially. Boards have been wrong. Now, I don't advise you to go in and say, "You're wrong, I'm right," right? That's not gonna be an effective because it automatically causes them to be defensive on that front. But I do go in and say, "Can I offer a different perspective? Can I give you a different perspective and some additional data on this area?" Now, if you have done that, where you have had a chance to brief them and you feel you have fully and accurately explained to them everything that's going on and why technically you're right, they're wrong, and they should change their decision, and they don't, I want you to pause and have a moment of reflection there. Could you possibly be wrong? Well, let me ask you this. If you really have accurately explained your position and nine people that typically have more experience than you and have built more businesses than you and potentially have more money than you, right? Which is usually the case with the board. You are actually saying that you are smarter, more brilliant, and that these nine people are completely and totally naive and have no clue what they're talking about. That's real. That if you're saying you're right, they're wrong, that's really, I'm going deep here because you'll see where I'm going in a second. That's really what you're saying. And is that really a high probability? It does happen, but is that really a high probability or the best explanation? No. So maybe, just maybe, they're looking at it differently than you. They have a different perspective than you. Maybe you should try to set up one on one meetings to understand. Don't go in from a confrontational standpoint, but just go in with one of the board members and say, listen, I want to, I do support your decision, even though I have a different perspective, but I'd like to better understand what I'm missing on why you made that decision. Would you be willing to have a meeting and help me understand what am I looking at differently or what can I look at differently so I can understand and look at it and see it from your point of view? Second, maybe just maybe you're not explaining it as well as you think you are. So you're sitting there going, yeah, this is clear as day. But if it's clear as day and nine really, really smart, really, really successful people aren't convinced, maybe, just maybe, you're not presenting it as well as you think, and you need to do a better job on the presentation side of the house. So I'm always careful when I hear right or wrong or disagreement with execs or things with boards, is a lot of it is really a reframing of who is really right or wrong and how are you looking at the problem, and is there a way that you can look at the problem differently to try to be able to resolve it or come to a different conclusion. So let's say I'm fully committed every day. How long would it take to reach world class level from scratch? How many hours? So committed. I have friends of mine that are committed. They wake up at 5 a.m. every morning. They are at the gym at 5:30 every day, 7 days a week. Every day the gym's open, even on holidays. You could say that's committed. On Saturday, on Sunday, on holidays, they wake up at 5 a.m. as long as the gym is open. And they're there at 5:30. You would say that's committed. But they stay for 30 to 45 minutes. Maybe if it's a good day, they'll actually like lift some weights. But they'll talk, they'll walk, they'll wander. So commitment is an interesting thing. On the one hand, they are committed to waking up, committed to showing up, but they're not committed to actually doing the work. And even if I take that further, I have folks that show up at 5:30 and that they're hitting the weights the whole time. That they're going at it, but they do 20-minute workouts. Now, if you do 20-minute workouts a day and I do 60-minute workouts a day, properly and correct, do you think we're going to get the same results in the same period of time? No, right? Because how much time are you putting in? So I would just go back with Blazin is when you say fully committed every day, what are you talking about? Right? If you're talking about 3 to 4 hours a day, then I mean, true world class, you're probably talking 2 to 3 years. If you're talking 1 hour a day, right, you're maybe talking 3 to 5. If you're talking 30 minutes a day, it could be 8 to 10. What it really comes down to, and I forget which book it's from. I think it might be Outliers or one of those, but essentially the idea is to get mastery and expertise in an area approximately takes 10,000 hours. So 10,000 hours is when you're really in one area. I'm not saying across the board, in one specific area. So if you focus on speaking or presenting or that type of role, 10,000 hours is typically where you sort of get that mastery that people will call you world class. So if we look at all the skills that are needed, the question then comes back to how much time are you willing to put 10,000 hours in, right? Are those 10,000 hours to get that mastery going to happen in a year, 5 years, 10 years? The one thing, though, is world class at some level does require work experience, right? So even if you did 12 hours a day, nothing but focus on that without work experience or doing it, it's going to be hard to get that world class. That's why it's always a minimum of 3. But my suggestion to you is, Blazin, build a schedule, stay committed, have it covering. You should have exercise and diet in there. You should have some mindset work. You should have some reading, some business, some technical, and just commit yourself to a schedule that you like, enjoy, that fires you up, and then just rock and roll. I mean, I'll give you a couple of the other quick tips here. No TV, no sports, and no watching sports and no playing sports. Look at how many hours the average person spends watching professional sports. I mean, I have friends that spend 4 to 5 hours on Saturday watching college football, and then on Sunday watch 5 to 6 hours watching NFL. 11 hours. That's a day and a half. Imagine if you read, worked, researched, created videos, wrote a book 11 hours a week. Think of how much further you would be in those areas. And I always get pushback going, oh, but Eric, you got to live life. Great. You were asking me about fully committed, right? You don't have to be fully committed. Second, I love doing that. I actually do not get enjoyment watching a football game for 3 hours. That's just not my mojo. That's not my jam. It doesn't work for me. Reading a book, I'm fired up. I love it. So you also have to align it with who you are and make sure that you're really having fun, because if it's torture and you're not enjoying it and you're not fired up, you're not going to stick with it and it's not going to work. So at this point, we are at the end of our time. We do 45 minutes. I think I got to most of the questions. Remember, first come, first serve, right? So you want to go in and make sure you win the Justin prize, right? Justin was in first, Vic was second this week. So I will see you next week at 9:30 a.m. East Coast. Have an amazing week. If there's anything I can do to help you out, please let us know. Joseph, I'm super excited to see you on Monday. If anyone else wants to join our CISO course, definitely reach out to our team today. We have our next group starting on Monday, so in 2 days. So there's still, I haven't checked. We might have sold out, but there's usually, when I checked this morning, a couple slots left. So if you want to join us, get in on that, reach out, ecole@secure-anchor.com. Otherwise, keep being awesome, keep being world class, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much. Take care.